But I want to turn now to Christina Ruffini. Christina is our CBS News State Department reporter, and she joins us now. Christina, people have taken to the streets not only in the nation's capital, but we are hearing that there is a global response. So what are you seeing, first of all, on the ground there, and also wearing your State Department hat? I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about the global reaction.
Well, it's been very interesting. I mean, D.C. is obviously a very politically active city. It's also a very liberal city. And when CBS News decided to announce that we were calling that Joe Biden was the prospective winner of this election, I happened to be standing outside because I was trying to get service on my phone. And before I could hit the tweet, you could hear people shouting from their windows all over my neighborhood, just screaming, yay, and go Biden. I haven't seen that kind of reaction in this city since President Obama won in 2008. Now, the place I'm standing, this is 16th Street, which is the main thoroughfare that goes all the way down to the White House. Now, in front of the White House right now is that scale-proof fence that they put up after the protest this summer. It's still there. So you actually cannot, if you're close up, you actually cannot see the White House over that fence. But from this vantage point, you can see all the way down to Pennsylvania Avenue and the thousands of people who have just spontaneously come out of their houses today because they wanted to be with other people. I've talked to a couple of them who said this was just a moment of release after a long couple months and a long couple days of being cooped up inside and staring at returns. To finally have a decision one way or the other is an incredible relief, and they wanted to be outside and be with other people.
So, staying with that thread, Christina, you're there at Black Lives Matter Plaza, right in front. Right in front of the White House. Before the pandemic, I think that was Jacksonville Square, right? That wasn't Black Lives Matter Plaza. Talk to us about the significance of that location, of what it is called now, and the results of this election.
It really wasn't anything. It's always been a place that protesters can go because of its proximity to the White House. So behind me, at the end of this street, is Lafayette Park, which you might remember from earlier this summer. That was the park that protesters were in when it was cleared, so the president could walk across that park and do his photo op at St. John's Church, which is a very famous church right across the block from the White House. So ever since then, it's become kind of a rallying point for the emotional center of Washington, and anything that happens here, good or bad, people tend to gather in that same spot. You know, a few nights ago when we were out on election night, we had some skirmishes with protesters. It got a little ugly at times. It was peaceful at times. You had people from all walks of life on election night. You had pro-Trump, you had anti-Trump, you had people who were there with completely their own agenda. You had a woman singing Christian rock songs. You had another guy drumming. You had a guy threatening to box Obama. So, you know, whatever happens in D.C. now, it comes to this part of the city. And today, almost immediately, people started pouring out of other quadrants of the city and centralizing here on 16th Street and joining the crowds going down to Pennsylvania Avenue. And it's been peaceful and very joyful so far today.
So tell us about the police presence on the ground there. Has there been any evidence of conflict following the announcement? Are there Trump supporters? I saw a small group of them in one of our other shots earlier, but an overwhelming majority there, certainly joyous at the news that Biden is going to be the next president of the United States.
You know, the only bit of conflict we've seen so far, it's been overwhelmingly peaceful, and it's been overwhelmingly pro-Biden so far this morning. We saw a car coming through, and a lot of the honking has been joyful, and this seemed like not joyful honking, going a little too fast and kind of pushing its way through the crowd. But for the most part, you know, coming down here, people were hanging out of windows, people were kind of blocking traffic, and then rather than getting upset, the cars would just honk, and they'd all cheer, and they'd all wave back. It's been jubilant, and the police, behind us is a circle that leads onto the square. The police have blocked off pretty quickly all the entrances to this street, and all the side streets are blocked off as well. And it seems to be that's mostly for the protection of pedestrians who kind of aren't giving cars the right of way. They've taken over very quickly, and so most of the cars are being stopped, and that's the police presence you see behind us. But as opposed to other nights when we've been down here, when police have been, you know, posturing and ready for whatever comes, you know, they seem very relaxed so far. Earlier, the police officer behind me was kind of jiving to somebody's speaker. So luckily, so far today, it's been calm. Obviously, we hope it stays that way. The other thing to think about is D.C. is overwhelmingly Democrat. So if you do have Trump supporters, normally they're going to have to come in from other parts, Maryland and Virginia. So it would take them longer to get here. So we'll have to see as the evening wears on if it stays kind of universally a Biden-Harris group, or if we start to see a bigger mix as we have nights before with events that were more pre-planned.
Christina, I see, sticking with the crowd for a minute more, I see that there is no social distancing. I see that you're trying to keep yourself perhaps away from other people, at least. But in the massive crowds there, right in front of the White House, people are packed pretty closely together. There's dancing. I see masks. But is there any acknowledgement at all of the coronavirus pandemic that is a very serious problem at this moment?
You know, this is the contradiction that you get with this group of people who generally do believe in the coronavirus, and it's one of the reasons they voted, and will tell you they voted for Joe Biden. When it comes to protests, Black Lives Matter protests, and big, solidarity movements like this, almost everybody is wearing a mask. You see that pretty universally in D.C. This is a mask-wearing town. However, if I step out of the way and you look, there is not an ability to social distance the closer you get to the White House. And it is outside. There is air circulation. We haven't seen a huge spike in COVID cases in the city after other large protest movements that were outside, perhaps because the crowds have been pretty meticulous about wearing masks. I've seen them go up to people who aren't wearing them and say, hey, come on, man, put your mask on. We're all trying to stay safe out here. But for the moment, it's like someone hit the release valve on the city, and their biggest concern is not necessarily COVID. It's going out and taking a sigh of relief and being out in this beautiful weather and being able to celebrate what most people around us are considering a victory here today.
Christina, before I let you go, I want you to put back on your hat as our State Department reporter. Are we hearing things from other world leaders? Are they sort of waiting and giving the U.S. just this moment before weighing in? Have we had much global reaction?
Leading up to this, especially European leaders were very reluctant to comment one way or the other. I remember I read a quote from some European lawmaker who was asked to comment about the presidential election, and they basically said, I want no part of your garbage election. They just are watching, the whole world is watching from afar, because this is not traditionally how elections have gone in the U.S., right? They are traditionally peaceful and not quite this contentious, even though they're always passionate, and there's always been passion on both sides. So world leaders, for the most part, until today, we've seen statements from the UK and a couple of other leaders. I think after President-elect Biden, as we're referring to him now, speaks, we will probably see more leaders gradually from all over the world start to weigh in. But with politics, there are people who maybe didn't agree with President Trump's policies, but President Trump's administration really benefited them. So those countries, I'm thinking like the Venezuelan opposition group, Juan Guaido, they were very much supported by the Trump administration. And I don't know how they feel about Joe Biden, but I think they're unlikely to get the same amount of attention from a Democrat. And they knew that going into this race. So it makes, the lines aren't quite as clear with the international priorities. You also have countries like Israel, who are a staunch ally of the U.S., who fear that, a Democratic administration, a Biden administration, might not be quite as vehemently pro-Israel as we've seen with President Trump. So everybody's just slow walking it, I would say. But they, statements of support are starting to come in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, especially China, Russia, the UK, see how some of these folks internationally respond to the news that we're all responding to here in the United States today. And to your point, Christina, this has been an election that has at times cast doubts on the electoral process, on American democracy, particularly with some of the words that President Trump himself has said about our electoral process. And American democracy is believed to be the gold standard, the platinum standard for how the peaceful transition of power takes place, how American citizens are empowered to choose who governs us. So now that it's done, now that there is a resolution, go for it, Christina.
Oh, sorry, there's a bit of a delay here. I'm sorry. What I was going to say is one of the big issues I'm seeing just on a micro level is in the last week we've had a lot of contested elections overseas. I'm thinking specifically Lukashenko in Belarus, who kind of had the secret inauguration and swore himself in. There have been a couple of elections on the continent of Africa. There have been, elections in South America. And the State Department traditionally sends out these statements. Like with Belarus, Secretary Pompeo sent out a statement saying, You need to respect the rights of the Belarusian people to have a free and fair election. And the pushback from these governments is now, you can't tell us to have a free and fair election when your president is getting on television and saying that your own election is rigged and false and you have your own problems. So on an international standpoint, it has diminished the ability of the United States and the State Department to effectively advocate for democratic values overseas when people there do not see those same values being followed at home.
So, Christina, when I was talking earlier with White House correspondent Nicole Killian, she was talking about the transition team for Joe Biden already at work. Obviously, they're one of the most important parts of any transition regards how the United States interacts with the rest of the world and the State Department. Are you hearing anything yet about who may be considered, who might be on the short list for a Biden administration for the post of State Department, the head of the State Department?
We have. It's not anything that's reported out enough that I'd want to say it on air. But, what happens at this point, it's all but kind of been on hold until they felt like the election was called. Nobody wanted to jinx it. Nobody wanted to raise their hand too soon. But in the last day, I've heard all kinds of names being kicked around. Some are senior staff members from the Obama administration. Some are members of Congress. Some are people who ran against the vice president early in the primaries. This is all in the mix. Secretary of State is one of those great cabinet posts that people really, really want. So there will be a lot of competition. But you have to think about the fact that if Republicans keep hold of the Senate, someone like Susan Rice, who's a name who's at the top of everybody's list, might not be able to get through a Senate confirmation if it's run by Republicans. So it's going to depend on who has control of the Senate as to whom they can nominate for these posts, including the Secretary of State. They might have to go with someone a little less controversial and a little less, known and disliked by Republicans in order to get them through the confirmation process.
That is an interesting point there, Christina, because I think we've probably heard some of the same names being bandied about. And as the control of the Senate is still unresolved, it does potentially impact who Biden would nominate to be in his cabinet, and even these crucial cabinet posts like Secretary of State. I want to check back in with you now, though, on the crowds that we're seeing building there. Anything more that you are learning from the people that you've been speaking to there on the ground?
Not so much. It's just, it's a young group. It's a vibrant group, although we have seen a lot of diversity. As I was walking up here, I saw a couple probably in their 70s or 80s kind of walking slowly towards the group, and they were on their phone, and I overheard the woman say, oh, she's just calling to congratulate us. So everybody is just kind of out, and I think, D.C. we've had a rough summer. The country's had a rough summer, but we've been in lockdown. There's been a lot of protests. We had those very violent protests that I would say turned into riots over the summer. The entire downtown boarded up in preparation for this week because people were afraid of what was going to happen. For the most part, we were out on election night. We had 2, maybe 3 brief, skirmishes. For the most part, it's been quiet and peaceful. And again, I think it's like someone hit the exhale valve on the city. First with people literally exhaling and yelling out their windows, and now they're coming down here to make some noise and feel some joy after what's been a tough couple months and a long, long week of watching television.
It has been a lot of television. It's been a lot of election results, and on cue, as you're talking about,
phone refreshing. So much phone refreshing.
My thumbs hurt. As you were talking about how the mood has shifted away from this feeling of fear. There was a mom with a baby in her baby Bjorn walking behind you, and a dad who just put a little kid on his shoulders. Have some of those placards, those barricades, those plywood on top of storefronts, have some of those started to come down now, Christina, or have you not been able to see that given where you are?
I haven't seen them come down yet, and I think the reason is that thing I mentioned earlier with things get a little weird when the sun goes down, right? All these families with kids and puppies, they tend to go home and eat dinner, and other people tend to come out, and usually they can be some troublemakers. So I think I think the city is relieved, but I think everyone, including myself and my crew, are waiting to see if that holds through the night. I think if it holds through tonight, then maybe we'll start to see some of those boards go down. The real question is when we're going to see this fence come down, and I don't know if we can see it because it's really far away, but it's been so strange to have a presidential election and not be able to see the front of the White House, because when you walk all the way down to the street where Lafayette Plaza is, there's that big 8-foot fence, and it's been covered with Black Lives Matter signs and a whole bunch of other stuff throughout the week. So you literally, excuse me, sir, thank you, not a problem.
Right.
So you literally can't see past it to the White House. So we'll have to see if after this week, if those gates finally come down.